So the title of my presentation is Connecting Stories, Enhancing Global Awareness Through Extensive Reading. Just as a background, I am a JALP member, of course, in the SIG. I'm also a member of JERA, and also in the GAIL SIG, which is the Global Issues in Language Education. So as Jackie said, my background is in environmental management. So I like to also raise the awareness of my students regarding environmental issues and other social issues. And so I had decided last year to try to do that even more by introducing books that are related to environmental or social issues in my class. So all of you here will know about Day and Bamford's 10 principles of necessary for success. Now, of course, here, number 8, reading is individual and silent. And in my course, that is what usually happens. I have 2 sessions a week, 45 minutes each. I try to give the students about 15 minutes per session to do extensive reading. And in my first semester course, the main course that all of the second-year students must take, I use Xreading. So basically, I get them to read on Xreading for about 15 minutes for twice a week. Now, number 10, the teacher is a role model of a reader. So I have not had so many chances to do that, and because I have so many students, it was not so easy, but I did come up with a way last year. And from Rob Waring's publication here about variable pedagogical dimensions of an program, the teacher reads or doesn't read with students in the classroom. Usually I don't read. I let them choose. The degree of freedom to select texts in my class is very high. Basically, the students are free to select whatever is available in the range of their level. But, and Leslie also mentioned this in her presentation, that students do react positively when the teacher reads out loud to them. So I have sort of brought that into my course. And so Read to Me was the original title of this presentation, but why read to me? And as Jacob says, many benefits have been proposed for teachers reading aloud to their students, whether that is for pronunciation modeling or for a sense of community. Everyone is listening at the same time to a story. So the idea that I came up with last year was, instead of pulling ideas or topics out of a hat at random, which could be confusing to the students, I decided to use designated special days as a way to introduce topics to the students. So, for example, in 2023, here, these weeks are the weeks of my course, and then I looked for special days that fall within each particular week. For example, World Health Day, Earth Day, and the ones in yellow are ones that I actually picked up in class and read books about for the students. Pardon me. So I felt that I wanted my students to think about more, well, global issues or social topics, and then how to do that. So this is the idea I came up with. But not all of them are about social issues. For example, in July, I talk about World Chocolate Day, although this can be related to concepts such as fair trade and also the situation for cocoa producers around the world. Now, other possible special days in 2023 would be World Frog Day, which usually turns most of my students off because I teach at a junior college. 90% of my students are women, and, well, the guys also might react negatively, but usually when I show a picture of a frog, I hear lots of yuck around the room. But there are a couple who are interested, and it's one way to introduce them to things that they might not usually think about or try to avoid. World Wolf Day would be in August. I can't usually use that because it's out of the semester, but because it's one of my research interests, I just picked it up here. Terry Fox Run. I'm from Canada, so Terry Fox is a Canadian hero. And there's a Terry Fox Run here in Sapporo, usually in September. I try to introduce Terry Fox to the students, but I use Canada Day, July 1st, to introduce him as a Canadian hero. And as I'll say in a couple of minutes, there are some books related to Terry Fox available both on Xreading or as paper books that we have in our library. Others, World Sloth Day, International Nut Day. So basically there are a wide variety of topics that can be touched on. This year, I picked up Earth Day, World Bee Day, World Otter Day, World Day Against Child Labor, Juneteenth, which is not around the world, but a new holiday in the States. Gave a bit of background to that. World Chocolate Day and Malala Day. By the way, please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have a question. I can't see everyone right now, so please feel free. And if I'm going over time, somebody please let me know. Okay, so these are some examples of paper books that I have used in class for World Chocolate Day here, about how Quetzalcoatl brought chocolate to the people, which can also touch on social issues of the status of different people in society. Otters, just environmental issues, frogs as well. And these all have their own special days. So Malala Day, I asked my students who knew Malala Yousafzai, and about 2 or 3 raised their hand. This is out of over 60. And so I thought it's a good way to introduce them to someone who feels very strongly about education, especially education for children and girls in particular, and almost lost her life because of her dedication to education. So this book is in Xreading, and I read the book to the students, but I also give the students, well, I use word count for my extensive reading class. And when I read a book to the students, I give them credit for the number of words in the book if they were in class on the day that I read it, whether that was an Xreading book or a paper book. Nelson Mandela, I did not pick up on that this year, although I did mention Mandela Day to the students. And again, very few actually knew about him. But if you're familiar with Xreading, I made a separate assignment about social issues, and I put some books related to Nelson Mandela into that assignment so students could read those books if they were interested. Terry Fox, this is one of my favorites, and there is a book in Xreading in the grassroots biographies about Terry Fox. And this year I did not have time, but last year I read the Penguin Readers paper book to my students and gave them credit for the number of words in there. So this book cannot usually be accessed directly in Xreading, although the M-Reader quizzes function of Xreading can be used for students to take the quiz. In my case, I just gave them the bonus words directly. So in Xreading, sorry, Paula, screenshots from your program, but I suppose it's kind of pushy it as well, so hopefully you won't mind. Within the assignment, there is a button called bonus words, and here extra words can be added to the student reading records. So in this case, I use them for books that I have read to the students. So when you click that, you can associate it with an assignment that you have made for the students. In my case, it doesn't really matter. Any assignment is okay. It will show up on their reading record. And then I just put in the date that I read it to them, the title of the book, and then the number of words. So the number of words we can get from Xreading itself directly, or from M-Reader if I use paper books that are not available in Xreading. And below here, you can barely see it, but this is a list of all of the students in the class. So I can check all, and then I just uncheck the students who are absent that day. Yes, I know it's easier just to give the credit to all of them, but if they're not there, I don't give them credit for the words from the books that I have read to them that day. Okay, so here's an example. So if you put in the title, Gray Wolves, it's a very short book at 204 words, but every little bit helps for the students. I give them a minimum 60,000 word goal and over 200,000 if they want to get an A+. And so every little bit helps. And that's just in Xreading, there is information about the different books. So if I am reading it to them, I can get the number of words from here, as well as the title of the book, and then add it when I give them credit for those bonus words. Now, if you don't use Xreading and if you use mReader, there is a similar thing through the give extra credit function. And again, you can add the number of words here. I could not add the title of the book, but I could give credit for the number of words read. And it's still very similar to what I did in Xreading. Now, basically, I'm getting towards the end. I've added a URL for a list of, as it says, UN recognized special days. And there is a fairly comprehensive list of special days throughout the year. And you can use those. You can also find other days, for example, World Chocolate Day or World Bee Day on different websites as well. Or you can just randomly search for a special day during the week that you want to read a book to your students. It's very flexible in that regard. But I just felt it was a good way to have a context for why I was bringing up this topic and reading this book to the students. Just some credit to Jacobs and Waring for some of the material that I used near the beginning. And here again is my department's Instagram. Again, as I said, we will be closing after, well, including this year, 2 years. So I want to do as much as I can for my department before it's gone. So I think that's basically my presentation. So I will stop sharing. And if anyone has any questions, I'm very happy to hear them. And also comments or criticisms. I'm happy to hear that as well, since it's a fairly new activity. I only started it last year.
Thank you very much, Kurt, for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or I know Catherine, Aksaka has put in the chat that her high school daughter uses the special day website to find out what today is. I've used that as well, just to say, by the way, today's ice cream day or whatever. So that's a nice way to find very obscure days of the calendar as well. So
yeah, which I think is a good thing as well. You know, bringing up things that are not necessarily related to the environment or to social issues can also be a good change of pace for the students. Teka actually also mentioned that he had used a junior high school textbook where they had lists of special activities or days. Sorry, Teka, I don't remember exactly what you said. I said, what did you say there, Teka? Which topics were popular? So I think there've been a couple other comments. So which topics were popular amongst my students? Okay, there's a good question. Well, I don't know exactly because I have a lot of students and it's a really busy course. I don't have a lot of time to follow up, but I do see that some of the students actually read the books when I put them into the Xreading assignment. And in the past, not the special days, but when I read a book about Korea, some of the students did have an interest in that and read that book. So I don't know exactly, Tekka, but I think judging from the reaction of the students, when I talk about things like, especially women who have done very special things, that a lot of the students are interested, since more than 90% of my students are women. Okay, so I'm getting some more here. Paul, you have your hand up, or you're just, no, okay, sorry. Okay, that,
Pekka's put in the chat
yeah.
again.
Yeah, Tekka put in the name of the book that he used in junior high that does also pick up some different topics related to the books that they're reading. Karina, about reading to the students. Yeah, well, long ago when I first started, I had a class called graded reading, and I basically read a little bit of Winnie the Pooh to the students every week. And they kind of loved it when I used different voices, like kind of slow voice for Pooh and a high-pitched voice for Piglet. And I had no self-respect, so I just tried to make it funny for them, and they did react positively to that. So I think it's perfectly fine to read to your students, as long as you're not doing it all the time. I think they would get a bit tired of that, but I don't know if anybody else has any experience with that. Certainly, as Leslie said, she had positive reaction when she read aloud to her students.
Is it okay? I think you can, if you read to them, you can also use a book that's on higher level than they would be usually reading by themselves.
Yes, exactly. That's also what I did. A lot of the books that I read, they would not usually have access to. So I put them into, if you use Xreading, you can do this. If you make an assignment, you can vary the levels of books that they have access to. So I let them have access to higher level books that are related to the subjects that I introduced to them. And it's a little bit easier for them to read. It's not as strict as in my regular assignments.